My name is Curtis Walker. I'm 61 years old, and for most of my life I believed a man could measure himself by how dependable he was. I spent 38 years working as a utility supervisor outside Greenville, South Carolina. Storms, power outages, broken transformers. I answered the phone no matter the hour because people depended on the lights coming back on. It wasn't glamorous work, but it was honest work. You learned that when someone needed you, you showed up. Retirement sounded wonderful when I was still working.
Sleep in a little. Go fishing whenever I wanted. Take long drives through the mountains. Maybe finally spend a week wandering around the Smokies with nothing but a cooler in the truck and no schedule hanging over my head. Life had other plans. My wife, Linda, passed away 8 years before I retired. Cancer doesn't care how many promises you've made or how carefully you've planned your future. One day you're discussing where you'll celebrate your 40th anniversary, and before you know it you're standing beside a quiet grave trying to understand how an entire lifetime can fit between two dates carved into a piece of granite. After she was gone, the house became painfully quiet. Every room reminded me of something. The kitchen still smelled faintly of the cinnamon rolls she baked every Christmas morning. Her favorite rocking chair remained on the porch because I couldn't bring myself to move it. Sometimes I'd catch myself starting a sentence out loud before remembering there was nobody left to hear it. If not for my daughter, Megan, I don't know how long I would have stayed buried inside that loneliness. She was 32 by then, married to Tyler, with 2 little children who filled every room with the kind of noise that makes a house feel alive again. Emma had Linda's smile. Noah had my stubbornness. They became my reason to keep opening the curtains every morning. When I retired, I imagined I'd see them often. I never imagined they would become my entire weekend. It started innocently enough. One Friday afternoon, Megan called. "Dad, Tyler and I got invited to a wedding tomorrow. Would you mind watching the kids overnight?" "Of course," I said without hesitation. She sounded relieved. "Thank you. You're saving us." The children came over with little backpacks stuffed with pajamas, coloring books, stuffed animals, and enough snacks to feed an army. We had the best time. Emma insisted we bake cookies even though neither of us could follow a recipe properly. Noah convinced me the living room floor was actually lava, forcing both of us to jump from couch to chair without touching the carpet. When Megan picked them up Sunday afternoon, they didn't want to leave. Neither did I. A few weeks later she called again. Another wedding. Then another weekend because Tyler had tickets to a baseball game. Then a weekend getaway. Then a birthday celebration. Before long, nobody asked anymore. Every Thursday or Friday, I'd receive a text. Dropping the kids off around 6. Not, "Are you free?" Not, "Would it be okay?" Just a time. As though everyone already knew where I would be. The truth was, they weren't wrong. I'd be home, waiting. I organized my entire week around those visits. Monday through Thursday were for mowing the lawn, grocery shopping, paying bills, and keeping the house in order. Friday morning meant buying Emma's favorite strawberry yogurt and Noah's chocolate milk. I'd stop by the toy aisle even when they didn't need anything. Puzzle, coloring book, some plastic dinosaurs. Nothing expensive. Just enough to see their eyes light up when they walked through my front door. By Friday evening, the house no longer felt empty. It echoed with laughter. Tiny shoes gathered beside my front door. Blankets scattered across the couch. Cartoons playing too loudly while popcorn somehow found its way into every corner of the living room. Saturday mornings belonged to pancakes. Mine never came out perfectly round. Emma said they looked like the states on a map. Noah thought they looked like monsters. Either way, they disappeared within minutes. After breakfast, we'd head outside. Sometimes we'd fish at the little pond just beyond the neighborhood. Most days we caught nothing. The children never cared. Emma named every turtle we saw. Noah spent more time trying to catch frogs than fish. Those moments became the happiest part of my retirement. People assumed I was doing Megan and Tyler a favor. In truth, those children were doing something for me too. They gave purpose to a house that had nearly forgotten what happiness sounded like. That's why I ignored the little things. The weekends I canceled fishing trips with old coworkers. The invitations from my brother that I kept turning down. The church picnic I promised I'd attend but missed because Megan had found last-minute concert tickets. Every sacrifice felt small compared to hearing Emma yell, "Grandpa!" while running across my yard. Then the weekends quietly became expected. If Tyler wanted to surprise Megan with a trip, the kids came to my house. If friends planned a winery tour, the kids came to my house. If they simply wanted a quiet weekend alone, the kids came to my house. 3 years passed that way. 156 weekends. Thousands of meals. Hundreds of bedtime stories. Countless soccer games in the backyard. I never kept score. Love doesn't keep score. But somewhere along the way, appreciation disappeared. One Friday, I mentioned that an old friend had invited me to spend a weekend fishing at Lake Hartwell. Megan frowned before I even finished the sentence. "Not this weekend, right?" I smiled. "No, maybe next month." She actually sighed with relief. "Oh good. That was it. Not, 'I hope you have fun.' Not, 'You deserve a vacation.' Just relief that her plans wouldn't be interrupted. I noticed it. Then I convinced myself it didn't matter. Young parents were busy. Life was expensive. I was helping family. That's what fathers did. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. Until the day I asked one simple question that changed everything. My question stayed in my head for nearly a week before I found the courage to ask it. Looking back, I don't know why I hesitated. Fathers shouldn't have to rehearse simple conversations with their daughters. Yet every time I picked up the phone, I found another reason to put it back down. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe she's busy. Maybe I'll wait until after the weekend. The truth was, I wasn't asking for much. I wasn't expecting them to pay my way or rearrange their plans around me. I had my own retirement savings, my own truck, and more than enough money to cover my share of a cabin. I simply wanted to spend a few days with the people who mattered most to me. The Smoky Mountains had always belonged to our family. When Megan was little, Linda and I saved all year for those vacations. We'd rent modest cabins with creaky wooden floors and porches overlooking endless forests. Megan loved waking before sunrise just to watch the fog drift between the ridges. She collected smooth rocks from every hiking trail and insisted on bringing home pine cones that eventually filled half our garage. Linda used to laugh every time we packed the truck. "We're driving home with more from the forest than we brought with us." Those trips became our tradition. Even after Megan graduated from college, she'd occasionally mention one of those vacations. "Remember when Dad slipped trying to cross that little stream?" Or, "Mom burned the marshmallows because she kept telling ghost stories." Those memories never seemed to fade. That's why I smiled when she casually mentioned they had rented a cabin in the Smokies for 5 days during spring break. We were sitting in my kitchen while Emma and Noah covered the dining table with crayons and construction paper. "They're going to love it," Megan said while scrolling through pictures on her phone. "The cabin has a game room, a hot tub, and it's only 15 minutes from the national park." She showed me a photograph. Large stone fireplace, wide wraparound porch, mountains stretching into the distance. It looked beautiful. "It reminds me of the places we used to rent," I said. She barely looked up. "Yeah, kind of." Then she went back to her phone. For the next few days, I kept thinking about that cabin. Not because I wanted a vacation, because I wanted another memory. Emma was getting older. Noah wouldn't stay fascinated by frogs and fishing forever. Children grow faster than anyone realizes. I wanted one more chance to sit on a porch with my grandchildren, watching the mountains turn purple at sunset the way Megan and I once had. Finally, on Wednesday evening, I called. She answered after the second ring. "Hey, Dad. Got a minute?" "Sure." We talked about ordinary things first. The weather, her work, whether Noah's cough had finally gone away. Then I cleared my throat. "I was thinking about that cabin. What about it? If there's enough room, I'd like to come along." Silence. Not the comfortable kind. The awkward kind. I hurried to explain before she misunderstood. "I'd pay my own share, of course. I don't expect you to cover anything. I just thought it might be nice to spend some time together. I could even help with the kids if you wanted a night to yourselves." For a second, I actually pictured her smiling. Instead, She laughed. Not a nervous laugh. Not the kind people use when they're surprised. A genuine laugh. Dad. Another laugh followed. I felt my smile slowly disappear. You don't seriously think this vacation is for you, do you? I stayed quiet. Maybe she'd realize how that sounded. Maybe she'd apologize. Instead, I heard Tyler's voice somewhere in the background. What did he say? Megan answered without covering the phone. My dad wants to come on vacation. Tyler chuckled. I couldn't make out his next sentence, but whatever he said made her laugh again. Then she came back to me. Her voice wasn't angry. It was casual, like she was explaining something obvious. Dad. She paused just long enough for the words to settle. You're the babysitter, not part of the vacation. Everything inside me went still. The kitchen suddenly felt enormous. The clock above the refrigerator kept ticking. Outside, wind pushed through the oak tree in my front yard. I couldn't hear any of it. Only that sentence. You're the babysitter, not part of the vacation. I searched for something to say. Some joke. Some way to pretend those words hadn't landed exactly where they had. Nothing came. I glanced toward the hallway where dozens of family photographs hung on the wall. Megan at 6 years old riding her first bicycle. Megan graduating high school. Her wedding day. Pictures of Emma and Noah sitting on my shoulders at the county fair. I'd looked at those photographs thousands of times. For the first time, I wondered if I had imagined what they represented. Dad. Her voice pulled me back. You still there? Yeah. You know what I mean, right? We just want some time as a family. As a family. The words settled even deeper than the first. Because if they were going as a family, what exactly was I? I wasn't asking to interrupt their marriage. I wasn't expecting them to entertain me every minute. I simply wanted to be included. Instead, I had been reminded of my job description. Babysitter. Nothing more. I took a slow breath. I understand. Good. I knew you wouldn't take it personally. Personally. How else was I supposed to take it? I wished her a good evening. She said she'd see me Saturday when they dropped off the kids. Then the call ended. I remained standing in the middle of my kitchen long after the screen went dark. Saturday. Of course. They still expected me to babysit while they packed for the very vacation I wasn't considered family enough to join. That realization hurt more than anything she had actually said. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was angry. Anger burns hot and fast. What I felt was something colder. Something heavier. It settled over me like a thick blanket I couldn't push away. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation over and over, hoping that somewhere between the words I'd discover I'd misunderstood her. Maybe she hadn't meant it that way. Maybe she was distracted. Maybe Tyler had put her on the spot. A father becomes remarkably talented at making excuses for his children. By sunrise, I had already forgiven her in my mind at least a dozen times. Then I remembered the laugh. Not the sentence. The laugh. People can say cruel things without thinking. Everyone does from time to time. But laughter comes from somewhere deeper. She hadn't sounded embarrassed. She hadn't stumbled over her words. She had laughed because the idea of me joining them seemed ridiculous. That was the part one couldn't explain away. Friday passed quietly. I mowed the lawn, washed my truck, stopped by the grocery store like I always did before the children arrived. Without thinking, I picked up Emma's favorite strawberry yogurt, then Noah's chocolate milk, a family-sized box of cereal they both loved, frozen waffles, mini marshmallows for hot chocolate. I pushed the cart through the store on pure habit. Only after loading everything into the truck did I realize what I had done. I was preparing for another weekend exactly the way I had prepared for more than 3 years. As though nothing had changed. As though I hadn't just been told my place in the family. When I got home, I carried the groceries inside one bag at a time. The house looked exactly as it always did before a babysitting weekend. Fresh sheets on the guest beds. Clean towels folded neatly in the bathroom. Board games stacked beside the fireplace. Fishing poles leaning against the garage wall. Everything ready. Everything waiting. I stood in the middle of the living room and slowly looked around. Every corner of that house carried evidence of my grandchildren. Emma's drawings still hung on the refrigerator. Noah's plastic dinosaurs guarded the windowsill in the den. Their height marks climbed the hallway wall, each date carefully written beside a pencil line. Age 4. Age 5. Age 6. I smiled despite myself. None of this was their fault. Emma and Noah had never treated me like free childcare. To them, I was simply grandpa, the person who always had time, the one who never said no to another bedtime story, the one who could somehow fix broken toys with a screwdriver and a little patience. Children love honestly. Adults complicate things. That afternoon, I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee, watching two bluebirds argue over the bird feeder Linda had insisted we buy years earlier. She used to tell me birds were smarter than people. They know when they're welcome, she'd say. The memory made me smile for a second. Then it disappeared, because another thought took its place. When had anyone last asked what I wanted? Not what I could do. Not whether I was available. Not whether I could help. What did I want? I honestly couldn't remember. For 3 years, my weekends belonged to someone else's calendar. Fishing trips disappeared. Church breakfasts disappeared. Neighborhood cookouts disappeared. Even my annual camping trip with 2 old coworkers quietly faded away because I was always already committed. Committed. Funny word. It sounds noble until you realize no one asked for your commitment. They simply assumed it. Around 6 o'clock, my phone buzzed. A text from Megan. We'll be there around 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. The kids already packed. No greeting. No question. No mention of our conversation. Certainly no apology. Just another schedule. I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. Then I typed 3 words. See you then. My thumb hovered over the send button. I deleted the message. Set the phone on the table. Walked away. That night I opened an old cedar chest in my bedroom closet. Most people probably keep old tax returns or forgotten clothes inside. Mine held memories. Linda's handwritten recipes. Vacation postcards. Photo albums. I spent nearly 2 hours turning pages. There was Megan at 8 years old holding up her first fish. Megan sitting on my shoulders at Klingman's Dome in the Smokies. Megan asleep in the passenger seat on the drive home. One hand still clutching a stuffed black bear we'd bought in Gatlinburg. Every photograph told the same story. Family. Not babysitting. Not obligation. Family. Somewhere between those pictures and the woman she had become. Something had changed. Or maybe it hadn't. Maybe I had. Maybe I had slowly allowed myself to become useful instead of respected. The thought stayed with me long after I put the albums away. Early Saturday morning I woke before dawn. Not because I had to, because I couldn't stop thinking. At 7 o'clock I made coffee. At 7:30 I looked around the spotless house one last time. At 7:45 I walked to the garage. I didn't load fishing poles. I didn't pack clothes for a weekend with the grandchildren. Instead, I climbed into my truck, backed slowly out of the driveway, and drove away without looking in the mirror. By the time the sun had fully risen over Greenville, my house was empty. The lights were off. The curtains were closed. And taped neatly to the center of my front door was a single sheet of white paper. Contained only 4 words. Find a new babysitter. The farther I drove, the lighter my hands felt on the steering wheel. Not happier. Just lighter. For 3 years, every Friday evening had carried the same invisible weight. I never noticed it because it had become routine. Grocery shopping, fresh sheets, extra towels, pancake mix, cartoons recorded for Saturday morning. My weekends weren't my own anymore. They belonged to someone else's plans. As Greenville disappeared in my rearview mirror, I realized something that unsettled me. I wasn't running away from my grandchildren. I was walking back toward my own life. The highway stretched ahead beneath a pale blue sky, bordered by rolling hills just beginning to turn green with spring. Dogwoods bloomed along the roadside, their white blossoms glowing in the morning sunlight. Normally, I would have driven straight through scenery like that without noticing. My mind would already be thinking about soccer balls in the backyard, grilled cheese sandwiches, bath time, bedtime stories. Instead, I rolled the windows down. Fresh air filled the cab. For the first time in years, there wasn't a single place I had to be before Sunday evening. About an hour into the drive, my phone buzzed. I didn't even look at it. A few seconds later, it buzzed again. Then again. The screen lit up against the passenger seat over and over until finally it went dark. I already knew who it was. At exactly 8 o'clock, Megan would have pulled into my driveway expecting to see my truck parked where it always was. Instead, she'd found an empty driveway, dark windows, and 4 words taped to my front door. Find a new babysitter. I imagined the confusion first, then disbelief, then anger, not concern. Not, is Dad okay? No. The first question would be much simpler. Who's going to watch the kids? That thought hurt more than I wanted to admit. I stopped at a small gas station outside Anderson to fill the truck. While the pump clicked away, I finally took my phone from the seat. 32 missed calls, 19 text messages, 6 voicemails, every single one from Megan or Tyler. Not one from anyone asking whether I was safe. The first text read, "Dad, where are you?" The second, "This isn't funny." The third, "Answer your phone immediately." Then the messages became shorter. "We're here. The kids are crying. Call us now." Tyler's texts followed. "What the hell are you doing? You can't just disappear. We've already paid for everything." I read every message once. Then I powered my phone off. Not silent. Off. The screen faded to black. So did 3 years of expectations. I climbed back into the truck and continued north. Nearly 4 hours after leaving home, I turned onto a narrow 2-lane road that wound along the edge of a quiet lake surrounded by pine trees. I'd rented the cabin the previous evening. 1 bedroom, a small wooden porch, a dock stretching 20 feet into calm water. Nothing fancy. Exactly what I wanted. The owner met me with a key and a friendly smile. "Fishing's been good this week," he said. "I hope so. You here with family?" I hesitated, then smiled. "No. Just me." The words sounded strange. "Just me." He handed over the key. "Enjoy the peace." Peace. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that until I unlocked the cabin door. It smelled of cedar and fresh coffee. Large windows overlooked the lake. A pair of rocking chairs sat on the porch facing the water. No cartoons. No toys scattered across the floor. No schedule taped inside my head. Just silence. Real silence. I carried my overnight bag inside, unpacked slowly, then poured myself a cup of coffee before walking out onto the dock. The lake barely moved. Every now and then a fish disturbed the surface with a quiet splash before disappearing again. Somewhere across the water, a loon called. I couldn't remember the last time I'd heard absolutely nothing else. No television. No ringing phone. No one asking for another snack. No one assuming I'd always be available. I sat there for almost an hour without speaking a single word. Felt wonderful. Around noon, I assembled my fishing rod. The same old rod I'd planned to use dozens of weekends but never had because something always came up. Birthday party. Wine tasting. Weekend getaway. Couples retreat. Another event where somebody else enjoyed themselves because I stayed behind. The first cast landed gently across the water. Then another. I wasn't even thinking about catching fish. I was thinking about breathing. Sometime that afternoon, I found myself laughing. Not loudly, just quietly, at myself. How had I convinced myself that retirement meant becoming permanently available? When had I accepted that my own plans mattered less than everyone else's? The answer came immediately, little by little, 1 weekend at a time. You don't notice chains when someone wraps them around you slowly. They become routine, comfortable even, until one day you try to move and discover they've been there all along. Late that afternoon, I caught my first bass. Nothing enormous, maybe 3 pounds. I admired it for a moment before slipping it back into the water. Watching it swim away, I realized something ironic. Even that fish had more freedom than I had allowed myself. As the sun began settling behind the trees, the lake turned shades of orange and gold.
I grilled a simple steak on the cabin's little charcoal grill, ate dinner alone on the porch, and listened to the sounds of frogs beginning their evening chorus. Meanwhile, nearly 4 hours away, Megan and Tyler were probably making frantic phone calls, canceling reservations, trying relatives, trying neighbors, trying anyone willing to rescue their weekend. For the first time since becoming parents, they had no backup. And for the first time in 3 years, neither did I.